Hey everyone, Ian here. Today we're going to be setting up a Raspberry Pi to become a full-fledged Homelab server using Docker. So if you wanted to get services like Plex, Home Assistant, and many others, we're going to get up more of like the basic structure of that. So if you have a Raspberry Pi laying around and you've wanted to get these kind of services set up, here's going to be a super basic video to get that going. You don't need to be a genius to get this done. Here we go. All right, we are going to just start by searching for the Raspberry Pi operating system installer. We're going to have our SD card already plugged into the computer. But once we get to this site, we're going to look for the download for Windows since that's what we are on here. And once the installer is done, we're going to run it, open it up, and then the first thing it's going to ask us is what device are we going to install this even for? We're obviously going to choose Raspberry Pi 5 because that is the device that I have. The operating system, I'm going to just choose the most updated version of Raspberry Pi OS, and then for the device that I'm using is the SD card here. So once I click this, it is going to give me the option to just go next, but I am going to edit the settings here, and then I just kind of skipped ahead and filled a bunch of this stuff in. I had created a generic Pi user. Here's the SSID. I accidentally wrote password, but we're just going to write Wi-Fi name here. And then everything else there is pretty much as is for your location. But there's one thing here. If you go to services, and then you'll want to enable SSH. I just do use password authentication first, just to get you started up and ready to roll. We can change this later as you go on. It's really your preference, but then you can create a public key and some keys as well if you want to do SSH keys. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So we're just going to go back, double check, make sure everything looks good, make sure everything's enabled, hit save, and then hit yes. And then continue. And then after here, it's going to pop up and give us a like verification window. And then I just sped this up 10 times, but you'll see this takes a little while. Here's a little bit of tunes for when this goes. I'm just going to let this kind of just run. I'm doing some other installs on the side, so you can obviously do something as this is going as well. All right, and once that's verified, we are good to just disconnect the SD card and then plug it right into the SD slot of the Raspberry Pi, and then you're good to start plugging it in. Now we're just going to get to the basic assembly and showing you exactly what goes where and how to get this thing all plugged in and ready to go. This is really just the basic equipment you'll need. Here's just the case right here, your SD card that already has its pre-installed Raspberry Pi OS from the previous section, and then your Pi board itself. So really, it's pretty straightforward. You just drop your Raspberry Pi in like this, keep your peripheral side together, find the O's that are all there. You'll find each screw hole, but it's really just like a nice little slot where they sit in nicely. Put the SD card to the side. Just pop the case lid on nicely, clicks beautifully. Then we will just pop this guy in. And then once we have it in the place that we want, we'll plug the power cable in, and then we'll have it connected to either Wi-Fi or Ethernet, depending on your preference. All right, now that we have the Raspberry Pi plugged in, SSD card in, we are ready to go. It is logged onto the Wi-Fi. We know because we use this tool here to the left. This is called Advanced IP Scanner. There's a lot of other IP scanners out there, but this one just quick does like a run through, pings to see what devices are available. This one eventually ended up showing me the IP address of my machine that I had, or my Raspberry Pi with this address. So once we know the address of the machine or the Raspberry Pi that we're connecting to, you can then on the right side here open up a terminal or CMD, either or, essentially. Just open up that on your other side and then type SSH, the username that you created. So we did Pi user and then the IP address. So 10.212.46.128. And then it's asking for a password. Boom, and we are in. So technically we are logged inside of the Raspberry Pi and we can pretty much do any kind of command that we really need to. This is pretty much any anything that you want to do with it. It is completely up to your ability now. But the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to update this. So we're going to do sudo apt get update. This is going to run through and just grab any packages. This part might also take a little while. If not, it may take a while, depending on how long it's been since you've spun up this Raspberry Pi. If you already have it, the OS installed, we're also going to just run an upgrade as well, just to make sure that if there are any loose packages that need to be upgraded, there they can be. So we're just going to hit yes. Some of these things we might not need, but like VLC player, this is for all like the desktop side of things, but like I said, we can ignore them for the most part. Chromium as well. We don't necessarily need to access Chromium on this device. But as well, I'll spin some music up while this updates, and then we will continue on. All right, now that we have that all updated and ready to go, I just quick typed the clear command. So if you just type that, it will just clear everything out. So I just typed in the clear command to get rid of all of the updates and everything, just so it's a little bit easier to manage and better for my eyes. Then up here, you can see I have some documentation. I'm going to link this in the description below. Here, we'll literally just click the copy button up here, but what this is doing is it's going to install Docker, it's going to enable it, making sure that it is always up and running whenever the PC starts, or the Raspberry Pi starts. It's then going to start the service once it's fully installed, and then this is just going to check to make sure that it was properly set up and is properly running. So I'm just going to copy and paste all of this in one. I'm going to hit yes here. Let this just go through. And eventually it's going to run the rest of the commands, and then it'll pop up with like a green dot showing, yes, Docker is running. Congratulations, you've done it. Your server is pretty much ready to roll. Gonna let this all just progress through. Once this finishes, we have one more command here. You can see that this just installs and configures Portainer. Portainer runs on port 9000 and 8000. And Portainer is pretty much just a front end version or front end for all of your Docker commands and your Docker packages. So if you want to find someone that has already created a package for you, or a or you want to just upload your own package and start running it there and start making your life a little bit easier. If you're also just not a fan of the command line and the CLI version of using Docker, Portainer is a little bit straightforward. But as you can see here on the screen, this is the status, and checking the status one right here, we are now able to see that Docker is active and running. So what that means is now we can run this Docker command here to run the Portainer file, and say if I'm just going to quick go over this. So this is going to run the file, or run the specific container that we're looking for under the name Portainer. If it ever restarts, if it ever fails, restart it. And then these are ports that it's going to be open to. These are where the volumes and the data is going to be stored. And then this is the exact Portainer, or the container on docker.io that it is pulling. So if we just copy this, and then I hit Control C to close out of this, and then we right click to paste. That was weird. It just was not letting me paste at all, so I just had to close and reopen terminal. And here we're back. Let's just now finally run this image here, and we will wait. And then I will start on the side here, since this is on 10. 10.212.46.128, port 9000. It's not going to be up and running yet because it's still extracting all of the data and whatnot, but we'll give it a moment. All right, and now that Portainer's Docker instance is actually installed and ready to go, it's actually telling us that we have to restart it. So I'm going to just do a sudo docker ps-all, find out our Portainer name, which is just Portainer, docker container restart Portainer sudo. Okay, that has been restarted. So then we can restart this. And now we have the ability to start creating the password. So let's just do a generic password. Cool. Oh, password must be 12 or longer. Cool. Took me long enough. Whew. All right. So now what all we're going to do is just get started, proceed with the local environment. So it's just going to use all of the local Docker stuff that we have already. All right. And now that we're in our Portainer instance and we have it set up and we're connected to the local Docker setup, we can just hit live connect and then check on our containers, and boom, we can see that we have Portainer running already, which is sweet. So if we want to start adding containers, there will be templates, applications, and then here, which is nice, the nice part about Portainer is that it's pretty much just like a single click to deploy any of these services. So if you just want to quick scroll through, let's just do like 100 per page so we can see. This is just like the generic, like, hey, Docker is used for a lot of developer tools. These are all just standard normal developer tools. But if you're looking to get started with like a Homelab system, there's plenty of other people out there that have kind of gathered all of their own templates. Sorry, the wind just blew really hard. I thought the door opened. So just like a couple that I'm familiar with, there is PiHosted, which they do a lot of mainly Raspberry Pi based Docker containers. And then there's also this one that I've used on my other server that I have. This is just more of a granular one. This has a lot more different services. And I'm also familiar with one of the other projects that Lissy has created. So shout out Lissy. But for this one, we are just going to use the PiHosted. I'll also have links to both of these in the description as well. And since we're going to be using ARM and we're on PiOS 64 based, we're going to grab the ARM 64 based link here. We're going to copy this. And then we are going to go back to Portainer here, hit settings. And then here where it says app templates, we are then going to just drop in the link that I just grabbed, hit save. And then when we come back to applications, you can now see that we have an entirely different group of services. And you'll find things like here we'll have Home Assistant. I'm sure Plex is on here, Jellyfin, all of these different kinds of services, AdGuard, Pi-hole, all of these different services. And then really all it is just clicking on one of these services, checking in here to make sure there's no conflicting ports of anything that you already have, and then just pretty much just hitting deploy container. And then that's really all it is. Once you're in here, now it's learning to troubleshoot when things don't work and checking in on your images and packages. It's also nice if you ever want to just hop in and quick see the logs, see if there's anything working, if there's any issues with anything. This is great. So if one of your services for some reason just stops working, you can just quick jump in here. I normally recommend turning off auto refresh logs and then setting this to like a larger amount so that you can then scroll infinitely, maybe refresh the logs once so it'll actually apply the larger amount. But other than that, this is pretty much just like the very general gist of Portainer and getting it started and setting it up for a home lab. But yeah, that's really all it is. I hope this has been helpful and eventually just becomes super useful for you and yourself at home. You can use this to flex on resumes, you can use this to flex on your friends, and you can use this to just make your life a little bit easier. Maybe even save yourself a couple of bucks here or there by finding an open source software that can replace a expensive software that you're using that costs you a subscription or just a regular license. So feel free to give me a shout out in the comments if you followed along, and if you made it to the end of the video. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Keep home labbing.